For more on this complicated topic of religion and politics, I want to welcome on Pastor Wallace Henley, an award-winning journalist and the author of the new book, Two Men from Babylon. So, Wallace, when we talk about this subject, everybody knows that politics and religion have always been intertwined. Some people would say that the very founding of this country is intertwined with the idea of religion. But right now, it seems to be a little bit different. So I want to ask you, in your new book, I know you touch on this subject a little bit. Can you describe how religion and politics are now playing together?
Yes, and this time there's a recognition, at least by some people in the country, that our value system, our worldview, is set by our religious beliefs. This has been true for every civilization. If you read the great works on civilization, you will see that the worldview that establishes a nation and its nature is established in its view of the transcendent.
And, you know, that makes a lot of sense because even right now, we're seeing two different visions of this country, I would say. In fact, you could even argue more than that. But there seems to be a more polarized environment than perhaps in times past. It seems like in the past, Americans agreed on where we wanted to get to. It was just a matter of how we got there. But right now, it seems as if there's two different visions for this country. So when you talk about the value sets that make up what defines a nation for the most part, do you think that there is a divide right now when it comes to that?
There's a very serious divide, and it's been building since the 1970s, or 1960s, really. And we're seeing the manifestation, the outgrowth of that now. I watched it as a young aide in the Nixon White House when I was on staff there for 3 years, and I watched it develop. But what is different now is that secular progressivism has become the religion of the left. And in my book, I talk about the church of secular progressivism, left secular progressivism, that is increasingly trying to define the values and the worldview of this nation. It is a redefinition of worldview, if you will, and a redefinition of values that's going to produce quite a different nation if they get in power.
And Wallace, it seems that history is somewhat cyclical when it comes to some things. You bring up the Nixon administration, and I remember during the convention, Richard Nixon brought up things such as law and order, and even said the silent majority. I mean, there are things that were existent there that are seeming coming back to light right now, and that came at a time where there was unrest on the streets, the same way that there is right now. But what a lot of people say is different about this moment is that, for example, Donald Trump Jr. said this, that people of faith are under attack now. And I think that's something a little bit different than maybe we've seen in the past, where you bring up that there may have been secular type of conversations, but right now there seems to be a little bit more emphasis on attacks against people of faith. Do you think that is more existent now than it has been in the past?
There's no question about it. But people of faith, Christians who believe the Bible, recognize that this is inevitable. Jesus said that we would be hated by all people because of his name, because of the name of Christ. But coming back to your point about time, you've made a very important point. There is the Bible reveals that there is a linear cyclical nature of time. There's a linear progression which moves from past, present, and future, but there are major events that cycle around that. And Mark Twain said it best when he said that history may not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. So if you look all across history, you'll always see this conflict building up. It happened in the French Revolution. It happened with the Nazi and fascist movements in Germany after the First World War. All across history, we've seen this pattern, and we're in it right now.
And it's a strange conversation to be having because, for example, when we used to talk about religious persecution, you would think in the Middle East, something of that nature. For example, when ISIS was at large and you saw Catholics being beheaded and terrible footage coming out of the Middle East. It's a weird thing to be having this conversation in the United States of America, a country that a lot of people would say was founded on the very principle of religion. The words under God are quite literally embedded in some of our key documents. But what you bring up the idea that the whole thing is cyclical to some degree, or at the very least rhymes. So traditionally, after we see this type of hardship, what comes next?
Well, very interesting. Here's the pattern that's revealed in Old Testament Israel. First of all, there's a ratification. God is God. We're a godly people. We're a godly nation. The God who is revealed in the Bible is the true God. There's a relapse of memory when people forget that truth. Relapse of memory leads to rebellion when people actively go against that worldview that had once defined them. Then comes the refiner's fire, when God removes his protective hand, allows the consequence of their actions to come. Then comes remembrance, when it gets so bad that people begin to ask the question, what did we leave behind? And then comes repentance, and then comes revival. So we're on that sweep of the refiner's fire. I think we're coming to a time of remembrance. I think things are getting so extreme that people are beginning to say, let's go back and pick up what we've left behind. I think that'll go a bit farther, but there's a good side of this if it leads all the way back to ratification.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's fascinating, and I really hope you're right, because even right now we see polarization at levels that we haven't seen maybe since the 1960s, as you mentioned before, but this moment seems a little bit different. And when I talk to viewers, too, they think it seems different as well. And I hope you're right, that we're at the point where maybe a lot of Americans are past the idea of division and are hoping to turn the corner and once again start looking at community and unifying with one another. I think you're exactly right. But for all of our viewers, once again, if they want to learn more about this topic, Wallace Henley right here, and he has his new book coming out. It's Two Men from Babylon. You can go look it up yourself and get a real more in-depth understanding of this topic and what we're talking about. But Wallace, I appreciate you coming on the program tonight and breaking down this very important topic at a very important time. Thank you.
My pleasure, Mr. Salve. Thank you.